Well, I'm still here, I'm still around, despite Sir Keir Bitchmitten's best efforts to try and tax me out of existence. I'm still going. And it's a bit of a bigger news day today. I say a bit of a bigger news day I mean, as regards this film and what I'm going to be talking about today. I've finally done it. You won't be able to see from the current shot, but I finally finished the suspension changes that I have been planning on making to this bike for months and months and months. Well, probably even years, in fairness. So both front and rear are now raised, and that's returned the geometry, all the angles, the wheelbase and all the rest of it back to the standard dimensions. The only difference being the bike is a little taller now, and so the downside to all of that is I have raised the centre of gravity slightly. But after a lot of measuring and investigating and trawling through the internet forums and I got a little speck of rain going on here. Yeah, forums and the relevant pages on social media, and after trawling through all of that lot, I came to a decision, and basically it's pretty much a copy of the Free Spirits lifting kit, although I've changed the dimensions ever so slightly. Now, I didn't film the actual doing of the work. The main reason for that being I'm really not geared up. I don't own the camera equipment or all the rest of it to do it justice, and there are plenty of people out there in YouTube land who are far better at filming that than I did. And I figured I'd leave them to show you how it's been done, you know, how to pull the forks apart. It really is pretty straightforward. You do have to be careful with the bolt that goes in the bottom of the forks that holds the damper tube in place, because that's an M10 bolt, but it's got metric fine thread, and it's very easy to mess a fine thread up. So you do need to exercise a little bit of caution with that. But anyway, advantage is I've now got the thing feeling the way I want it to feel. Because I've got my geometry back, I've also been able to remove the steering damper. I no longer need that. I've got rid of the weave. And now it's just enough taller that it's about 32 millimeters taller than it was as standard. But that's enough to now mean that I'm not dragging the pegs around every corner, which I was before when it was stock standard. it literally was every single corner. I was grounding the pegs. Then I put the shocks on the back, and it made it better, but I had the weave issue because the front end was of standard height. But now that I've got both ends done, that's not a problem I'm having anymore. Now the reason all this all started was I've had a few Triumphs, and I think the one thing Triumph, I don't think they're very good at it, but in fairness to them, they probably go for the best compromise that they can find as regards their suspension. Because it's not bad, it just doesn't suit me. So I mean, the Tigers, I've had a couple of Tigers, one of which does appear in some of my films earlier on. Both of them I put a different rear shock on, and I actually, the front end, I got that nearest my taste by putting heavier fork oil in it. Now that's one of the things I've done with this. So you can do a lift, or the kind of lift that I've done, with the standard springs. Now I'd already changed them and put progressive springs in. I believe they're Hagen's. But this time also I've put slightly heavier. I've got 15 weight fork oil in, so they're a bit firmer. Now the thing I always found strange was you'd trawl through the Triumph forums, and the pages, and an awful lot of people complain about the Triumph standard suspension being too hard, too harsh. Now the really strange thing is, I found the exact opposite. It's compliant, it damps, it does what it's supposed to do. You know, it doesn't bounce everywhere. But I thought, and I thought this of every Triumph I've owned, every modern Triumph I've owned, I thought the suspension was too soft. So I actually wanted to stiffen it up. So initially, when I was reading this and when I first had this bike, I'm thinking, is there something wrong with it? So I checked my fork oil level, that was fine. The shock absorbers, you know, the dampers were working, no leaks, no brakes, nothing was wrong with them. And I thought I was going doolally, I thought I was going round the bend. So it went on for a while, and I had a friend, a bit of an acquaintance really, more than a friend, but a guy I knew who also had the same age as this, the same bike, it's even the same colour as this, but he had a Scrambler, and his was absolutely stock standard, no accessories on it whatsoever. It was as it came out of the showroom, and I persuaded him to let me have a go on his bike. So we actually swapped bikes. This is, bear in mind, when mine was still standard suspension wise, and it was no different. I found his bike too soft. All the preload settings, everything was the same as on mine, but I just found it too soft. So I don't know what's going on there. I don't know why a lot of people seem to say, oh, it's got really harsh suspension, because to my mind it hasn't as standard. Anyway, I've put these spacers in the front, 15 weight oil. It's got a Hagen progressive springs of the standard length, and I'll see if I can cut to a cutaway drawing to give you an idea of which bit I replaced. Okay, I don't have the equipment to really do this, so I'm using the camera that I normally strap to my helmet. But here's a diagram, a breakdown of your front forks, Triumph front forks, and the bits that we're interested in. Well, that piece there, number 10. That piece there, number 21. And that piece there, number 15. Now that's your damper rod. That's the bolt that holds the damper rod into the lower part of the fork. Damper rod fits inside there. Bolt goes up through the bottom, clamps that in. And that thing there is a little plastic cup that the end of the tapered end of the damper rod fits inside. Now the fork extension, they're like top hat shaped 30mm deep washers effectively. That fits within there, so it sits more or less flush with the top of that. It sits inside that plastic cup, sits almost flush with that, and thus when you put the damper rod in and bolt it in using a longer bolt, it raises that by 30mm, or in the case of the ones that I made, 32mm. And then your spring, all the rest of it is as per standard, so the spring rests on top of that. So effectively all you're doing is you are extending the length of the forks by whatever the length of that spacer is that goes in there. You need the spacers, of course, one for each side. You need longer bolts, one for each side, and a little bit more oil. I can't remember the figure, but I pinched the volume from the new Spirits fitting instructions. I've got a feeling it was 470 or 475 millilitres, but you can experiment with that and add or take out as you need to. Well, I would do it in such a way that you have to add as you need to. And it really was, aside from the fact that getting that bolt out it's tight, it's fine thread. That does take a little bit of doing and a little bit of persistence, but aside from that, it's pretty straightforward and easy. If you do this, keep everything nice and clean. You don't want to bring a load of debris and rubbish into your forks by not keeping everything clean that sits within them, all the spacers, springs, bits and pieces. And it's as simple as that. Now, the Free Spirits kit, to my mind, is a bit pricey. In fact, it's very pricey. You get a couple of spacers that go in your forks, a couple of new bolts that are longer to accommodate the spacers, another spacer which moves the block where your front brake line bolts to the frame. It just moves it down maybe 8-10 mil, something like that, just to give you enough slack. The brake line's a little bit tighter than I'd like. I may well look into stainless steel lines at some time, but it's okay, it works. And talking about brakes, when I had the front end apart, I took the opportunity to stick some front brake pads in, so it's now got EBC brake pads. But the old ones, the ones that came out, were the original genuine Triumph ones. EBC's brake pads, they've got a bit more feel about them, although again the Triumph ones weren't bad. I just think the EBC ones are better. So there's a little pull in up here. I'll pull in and give you a view of a side view of the lifted bike. we go out of the speed limit. There's a little pull in there, and we'll go in that. I've been here before. Right, let's give you a side view of the lifted bike. The back end you've seen before. I've not done anything with the back end since doing that, but you can see the forks are now actually longer. The spacers are bolted right in the bottom through that bolt that goes up there. They're the original Triumph fork boots that are only just long enough. You have to stretch them, and I've had to put a cable tie on the bottom to stop them popping off until they've had a bit of use and they've stretched. But they're only just long enough. I also, when I put it back together and remounted the mudguard, it used to be tied to the wheel at the back at this end and stick up in the air at the front. I've evened that up. Now on a scrambler, the standard low mudguard is a street twin mudguard. It's the same thing that's fitted to the street twin, and of course I've got a street twin front wheel in there, so that's apparently how it should look. I still think it's a little bit high, but it's okay. So yeah, it wasn't a huge amount of work. I mean, I just undid the triple clamp top and bottom, undid these clamps that mount all my number plate and headlamp, and I did one side at a time. Obviously wheel out, caliper off, mudguard off. I just slid them out. First thing I did was loosen the cap on the top, so I could just unscrew it by hand when I got the fork leg out. Then you can pull the there's basically a spacer in the top there, and then the spring, and then all the gubbins is bolted in the bottom there. So yeah, I took the spacer out, the spring out, wrapped them up, kept them nice and clean, then tipped the oil out. Now I did need to put a little bit more oil in here. What I did was I measured it, I poured it in, I think it was, I can't remember what I did, 50 millilitres at a time. And there you have a measurement which fails. I forget it at the moment. I stuck a welding rod down there, a TIG welding rod down there with a cable tie at the relevant height. I can't remember what the height is, but it's height of oil, that's how they measure it. But what I did was, when I got to that height, I'd put it in 50 millilitre, poured it in measured 50 millilitre sections at a time. So again, I think it's 470 millilitres in each fork leg. I think that's what it was. Don't quote me on that. I'd need to look that one up. But yeah, the stance is right. It looks better. It certainly handles better. I no longer have to have a steering damper on that, so I've got rid of a bit of weight. And overall, I'm pleased with it. The suspension is firmer, but works well. I've not lost the handling or anything else by doing what I've done. Right, well, I'm on my way to, I was just out and about for a bit of a ride, but I'm a couple of miles away from Dragon Soul, so I'm going to pop in there. And have a hot drink. Although, it's not too bad today. Would I say not too bad? I've had a little dusting of drizzly rain, and it's sort of coolish. I believe it's about 10 or 11 degrees Celsius or centigrade, which is not too bad. I can live with that. I'm just getting the odd speck of rain. It's not enough to wet the roads, so riding the bike's plenty of fun. So the next job that I will have on this, I'm pleased with that suspension modification. The next job that I am going to have, and I bought them already, was when I knew I was going to do this, I bought some brake pads, but I bought a front and rear set. So although the rear brake is not, the pads aren't worn out, I'm going to change them anyway, and then I keep the original pads, which have got a little bit of life left in them, so that if ever I wear the current pads out, I can just put the old ones back in temporarily until another new set arrives. That just saves me scuffing my discs up, and it means, for the sake of 30 minutes, 45 minutes to change front and rear pads, I'm not going to be off the road, because if that sort of thing happens in the height of summer, while you're waiting for parts, you're just not going to be a happy person. So I'm thinking ahead on that one. I suspect there might be a few in here today, because the weather is sort of reasonable. Not as many here today as I thought there might have been.